And good morning, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to attending our first Nacelle Partner Office Hours. My name is Austin Rutherford, and I've recently joined Nacelle as the Senior Vice President of Customer Success and Solutions Architecture, and we'll be kicking off this first Partner Office Hours event. You might be asking yourself, why is a customer success leader kicking off the first Partner Office Hours event, which is a great question. In my first 2 weeks of joining Nacelle, it was immediately obvious that in order for Nacelle customers, or merchants as we call them, to be successful, we needed to have a repeatable process to build and scale partners. I quickly reached out to my organization and our partner organization to help accelerate a number of initiatives as quickly as possible with the goal of creating the best experience possible while building a global world-class partner ecosystem. This includes a number of items such as training, enablement, feedback loops, support channels, dedicated resources, a dedicated support organization, engagement with product management and engineering, and more. I'm extremely excited to be here, and my door is always open. I look forward to a great journey with all of you and getting all of our customers and merchants excited and successful, and building out a world-class partner organization. And speaking of a world-class partner organization, I'd like to introduce someone who many of you already know, Brian Jambor. Brian?
Thanks, Austin. Appreciate that. And just really appreciate all the support that you and the team have provided in terms of making sure that we are able to create, as you said, a world-class partner organization and to accelerate our investment into the partner ecosystem that we have here at Nacelle. So with that, I want to go into what we're going to cover today. We'll talk a little bit about what the agenda is, and then we'll transition to a really, really fantastic tech talk that we have with one of our really, really proficient in headless architecture engineers and now product managers, Levi, who I'll introduce here in just a minute. So here's what we're going to do for the agenda. We're going to go through a couple of intros so that you know who is here on the stream to support you. We do have a couple of high-level updates around Nacelle and some partner achievements that we'll discuss. And then we'll go right into our tech talk. And we'll talk a little bit about Nacelle starters as we explain what this partner office hour talk is. And then we'll have open Q&A at the end. So we hope that you'll ask engaging questions that we have a great expert team here on the line that can answer for you. With that, I will remind you that those of you that ask, the first 3 people that ask questions in that Q&A session, or section, I should say, get a $15 gift card from Starbucks. So happy to give those out and looking forward to the engagement. So let's talk just a little bit here about who's on the stream to support you. We have several senior leaders across Nacelle that are here and ready to support you. So first, Austin introduced himself. As he said, he's our SVP of Customer Success and Solutions Engineering. We also have on the line Spencer Smitherman, who is our Director of Solutions Architecture and leads a wonderful team that is in the trenches, oftentimes with our partners, in implementing Nacelle in a headless architecture or environment for our merchants. We also have Levi Whalen, who's our product manager and developer tools and documentation. Levi manages all of the rich documentation that we have around Nacelle. He was also one of the first engineers at Nacelle and has, in my opinion, more headless experience than just about anybody else in the organization, sans our CEO, Brian Anderson. So, really excited to have Levi here and the skills that he brings to the call. We also have our 2 partner managers. We have Jacob Tuman, who is our partner account manager who manages all of our agency partners, and Unita Hollinger, who manages all of our alliance partners and technology partners. Of course, I'm Brian Jambor and head up the partner ecosystem here at Nacelle. So let's talk just a little bit about what partner office hours or these tech talks are. What are our objectives? What are we trying to accomplish? Austin painted the picture very, very well early on. We want to create a world-class partner ecosystem. We recognize that in order to do that, you need to be able to interact with Nacelle frequently. You need to learn more about best practices. You probably have questions around Nacelle from a technical standpoint. We also want to give partners the opportunity to present and engage in our ecosystem and share the great lessons that you've learned in working with Nacelle or share a little bit more about the technology that you represent for our tech partners. We also want to make sure that you have the opportunity to ask questions. So we have our Slack channel that you can ask questions in our Nacelle partner workspace on Slack. You can also ask questions live here on the stream. And we also want to make sure that we shout out partners and recognize greatness as part of this in terms of the partner achievements that have been accomplished by some of our great partners in our ecosystem. So with that, I want to give you a little bit of a preview on some of the topics that we are going to be covering here in the future. A/B testing and phased rollout practices is going to be the next topic that we will present. That will happen on the 30th of November. Spencer Smitherwin will take on that topic. And the goal is to every Tuesday, sans holidays or other extraordinary events that may come up, every Tuesday to have these tech talks. And so you, again, see kind of the list of topics that we plan on covering. So really excited about that. Before we start, want to go into just a couple of quick updates and shout outs in regards to our partner ecosystem. So first, we do have a partner community. It's in Slack. It's our Nacelle Partner Slack workspace. Join it. If you need an invitation, reach out to your partner manager. They can give you an invitation to that community, and that's where you can ask questions. We have a lot of great Nacelle individuals, colleagues of mine that are in that community that can answer questions for you. We also are working on a partner directory that will be rolling out at the end of the month. And so you need to make sure that you work with your partner manager to get your listing updated in our new partner directory. You can visit directory.partnerpage.io to update your listing. Again, if you have questions, ask or reach out to your partner manager. And last but certainly not least, we want to give some shout outs. So again, we want to recognize greatness in our partner ecosystem. We have 2 shout outs to give today. The first is a shout out to Scoutside, who did an incredible job developing headless solutions on Nacelle for Sunday Scaries and Gimme. Both of those brands recently launched a headless architecture with Nacelle. Scoutside did an incredible job in the development, so I want to give a shout out to them. Likewise, we also want to shout out Zaner. So Zaner has done an incredible job implementing Boll & Branch and Roan, 2 significant brands. These were very complex builds that included Nacelle, and want to give just a great, huge shout out to Zaner on the incredible work that they did. Those sites are very fast and responsive. They did a great job. With that, what we'd like to do is transition to our tech talk. We have, again, Levi Whalen here, who's going to present to us a great amount of information around Nacelle starters. With that, Levi, I turn the time over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm excited to share some updates on our starters. I believe that every project that has kicked off with Nacelle to date has been using our starters as the entry point for building a merchant's site with Nacelle. So let's dig a little bit into, a little bit about the history of our starters and where we've been and where we are planning on taking it next. So if we look at this next slide, we see that we have a continuum of ways that you can interact with data coming from Nacelle. So on the left here, we see our GraphQL API, which is an interface into our data, really the merchant's data. And this gives you the most flexibility. If you need to get specific fields from that data, you can use the GraphQL API. If you need a little bit less control, a little bit more convenience, you can reach for the JavaScript SDK, which has a number of methods that it exposes in order to get that data. One more layer to the right, we have our Vue and React packages. So these are bundles of functionality in these 2 frameworks that really enable you to quickly get up and running without a lot of opinions. If you do want us to give some opinions, we have our Next and Gatsby starters. And I'm going to be going a little bit more in detail today about that part of the equation. So next, I just want to give you guys a brief history of the starters to date. And so if we go to the next slide, we can see that, historically, the Nuxt.js, Next.js, and Gatsby apps were scaffolded into a developer's local machine with opinionated UI components. And the problem that we've found, and many of you have found, is that when you start a build in January, and maybe the build starts to go, and maybe in March we release a new version of the starter, and it's challenging to get your code base up to date with changes that we've made to the components, whether they're bug fixes or just features that we've added, new ways of thinking about the data as the underlying frameworks are continuing to progress and make things easier for developers. We want to take advantage of those things. And so the problem that was introduced here is this point-in-time problem which I call it, where it's very hard to know between starter versions or between your code base and our new code base what's changed. So this is the main problem that we're trying to solve with these new versions. So if we look at the new Nuxt starter, we have greatly simplified the deliverable here to just contain the basics and get out of your way. So if you go to the next slide, this uses a lightly configured, and I put that in air quotes, because there is a small degree of things that we've added in here into this boilerplate to get it up and running for you. So behind the scenes, though, it just uses the create Nuxt app command that you can use just from Nuxt.js without having to do anything fancy. And then we load in our NPM packages to actually enable the Nacelle specific functionality. So what this means is that it's faster, which is less code equals more speed. So we've really cut down the number of extra JavaScript that has to be loaded on the front end. And in our initial tests that I'll talk a little bit more about our reference store after I walk through a little bit more of this, you'll see that the Lighthouse scores are fantastic. We're getting 90s on mobile and 100s on desktop, which is just amazing to see. And we'll continue to keep pushing that boundary as we go. So let's go to the next slide. And I want to share a little bit more about the React starters as well. So today we have made live a couple of repos. One is the Nacelle React repo, and you can find the Next.js and Gatsby starters there. There will be some updates coming with a new release of our SDK very soon. And then on the roadmap with that is scaffolding a React starter using the Nacelle create command. So currently, you can only scaffold the Nuxt.js starter using the Nacelle create command. But soon, you'll be able to type in npx Nacelle create in your terminal, and then it'll present you options of which starter you want to scaffold in your local environment. So this next slide is a sort of review of the architecture of how data comes from a merchant's upstream services into Nacelle, and then through that to the front end, and then to the deployment pipeline. So if we look here on the left, we see in this case, many of your merchants we know use Shopify Plus. So we have that, and then the headless CMS of choice, whether that's Contentful, Sanity, Storyblock, even WordPress could be, in the future used for that. Right now we have built-in support for Contentful and Sanity, but more to come in the future. So once we get that data into Nacelle, we are then exposing it via our storefront API, and the starter is able to consume that. And if you see those little red squares, those are our Nacelle provided packages. And so this is how we're really taking the ways of the old starter, where it had all this functionality inside of it that made it, that made it easy to make some changes to components. But we've really wanted to rethink this and think about how, in conversations I've had with many of you, you didn't actually want to be given a lot of these opinionated components. You wanted to really just build them yourself. And so we wanted to just get out of the way and not assume that we knew what you wanted there. So what we did instead is provide an interface for you to get the data into the page where you want it and then build inside of that. So that's really what this whole experience is enabling. Then once you're ready to deploy, it goes to Netlify, Vercel, or any other static file CDN, and then to the browser. And then once the customer is ready to check out, then we go to Shopify checkout for that experience. So I wanted to go through a couple of common questions that we may face in thinking about this new architecture. And we've gotten a lot of questions from you all about, should I upgrade my already launched merchants project to the new starter? And the answer to that right now is no, because to be honest, the functionality that we're really providing here is in the NPM packages themselves. So if you want to take advantage of that, you can install those packages and start to, slowly over time rework the site to be using those packages, and just update your the framework that you're using. So update if you're on Nuxt version 2.12 in the current project you're in, you can update that and then install our packages and start to roll forward. But starting with a new starter probably isn't really going to be the right choice. Again, moving this functionality from the starter itself into these NPM packages is really the big key here. And you can start to kind of see where things existed in your starter, but now they don't need to anymore because they're coming from this package. So it's going to really create that separation where in the future, when that NPM package is updated, you can just run an update command from NPM and get the new functionality, and you're good to go. And there's not this, this push and pull between the existing repo and your project. So another question that comes up is, if I'm performing a new build, should I use the new starter? And that's 100% yes. We're really excited about what is available now with the new starter. And so we definitely want to see that being used and get as much feedback on how we can continue to iterate on it and improve the experience. So the next question is, can I upgrade the starter in the future? And this sort of goes back to my first answer, which is kind of. It's intended to be a lightweight jumping off point, and it's not really, it's comparable to just running npx create Nuxt app. And we've just added a couple of things in there to provide that Nacelle functionality out of the box. So technically upgrading the starter kind of becomes irrelevant with the addition of our new NPM packages. So you're better off really focusing on keeping your JavaScript framework version up to date and then upgrade our Nacelle packages as they're released. So now that we have talked through the common questions, I want to show you what it looks like now. So I'm going to show a couple of different things. First, I'm going to show the new starter code base and just kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. And then once we have context on that, and I will share my screen in a moment. Once we have context on that, then I will show you what our new reference store architecture looks like. So along with these new starters, we're also delivering a reference store so that despite the fact that the starters now don't maybe provide as much opinion out of the box in terms of the UI, we have basically taken our new starter and built on top of it what we kind of imagine as a great e-commerce experience on top of that. So I will share my screen in 1 second as soon as I get into the right folder here. And now I'm ready to share. So here we go. Share my screen. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to get my IDE open here. And I'm going to make one small modification to my settings here so that this font is not too small for everybody. And so what we see here is this is what gets scaffolded now with the Nacelle create command. So if we go into the index here, which is our main page, in like the home page, what we can see is really not a whole lot. We are just getting the content that comes from the Nacelle index, and we're kind of showing you a placeholder to kind of give you an example of what could be displayed here. If we look at the products route, it's probably the most important part of the site. And we have given a couple of components here out of the box just to kind of explain how that works. So this is actually going to be something that you'll want to spend time really defining how those components all work. So I don't want to spend too much more time looking at this specifically, because I think the more valuable thing is to look at the reference store. So let me get the reference store opened up here. And so this is what you're going to see. We have a whole separate repo that we've set up for our reference store. So you can go onto GitHub and check that out. And it's really, for me, it's really exciting to have this because now we have sort of a best representation of what Nacelle can provide. So if we look here at our products route, we have this new product provider, which is coming from our Nacelle View package. And so we can essentially provide a product to components within this page. And one thing that this gives you is the ability to access variants and selecting variants. So that way, when you are on a PDP, you can click a swatch and that event will bubble up to this product provider and be able to set that for the cart. So I don't know how valuable it may be to dig in too far into that without showing you just kind of the front end to kind of explain the functionality a little bit more that way. But this is all here for you to explore. Again, this is really the reference store, and if you want to take some of this and build on top of it, you totally can. It's all available here for you. But we would not sort of expect that this is maybe what you use in your own project. It's more of a reference so that you can get inspired to build these things yourself. So I will go to my browser and I'm going to get this URL, and this is the live reference store, which is deployed on Vercel. And you can see we're really having a great time with this performance. And if we go to see a collection, we can look at this here, load more products. We can filter by the type of product it is. We can do a search. And it's just a really nice and fluid experience. And personally, I was really happy when we were able to release this and just show sort of like a really great experience with Nacelle. And like I said before, all the code for this is available on our GitHub. And I'm happy to provide links in the Slack channel to help you get there. So with that, I will pass this back to Brian.
Thanks, Levi. I appreciate that. That was a fantastic overview in terms of the Nacelle starter and the components that we have offered to our partners to help jumpstart their development and maybe get a little insight into some best practices and some considerations that you may want to have as you build out the storefront for your merchants. So where do we feel the opportunities are in terms of starters as far as the partner opportunity, right? We believe that there's a great opportunity to leverage that core scaffolding and build your own standard interfaces. We've seen a lot of great partners build their own IP and with developing some starter point accelerators, right? And so as you start to think through, okay, when you stand up a project, what are some things, components that you might reutilize that you want to create, right, to speed up the development process? We also see an ability to upgrade the SDKs and client code with a simple update of dependencies. And so we're really, really excited to see what our partners continue building on top of Nacelle with our mutual merchants. And we would love to hear from you in terms of feedback that you have, whether it be on the Nacelle starter or maybe some things that we could offer as part of that process that will help you improve the development process as you build those bespoke experiences for our mutual merchants. With that, what we'd like to do is we'd like to open it up for Q&A. So we have an entire team here that's ready and available and can answer any questions that you have around the Nacelle starter or any specific questions around Nacelle in general. Again, the experts are on the line and waiting. So with that, if you have questions, go ahead and type those into either the comment box on YouTube in the live stream, and we will see those come in. Or if you're already joining us on the Nacelle Slack partner workspace in Slack, you can go into the general channel and you can type in questions there. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask those now. Remember, the first 3 people to ask questions get a $15 Starbucks gift card. So happy to sponsor a daily caffeine jolt for the first 3 people. So with that, we'll give it just a minute or two if anybody has any questions. All right, looks like we have the first one that just came in. How do we know when there are upgrades available for a starter or future releases of the SDK? Levi or Spencer, which one do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I'll answer. So a couple of different things. So one, if you watch the repo, there's a functionality in GitHub where you can watch a repo and get updates whenever things are changed. So we're going to now have a very public rollout process for new upgrades. So as soon as we have a new release, that's going to be posted on GitHub, so you can subscribe to that. As well, we will be rolling out a help center that will help you to also subscribe to Nacelle updates in general. That's coming. I don't want to steal Austin and Spencer's thunder too much with that, but I know I'm collaborating with them on that. So that's going to be another way that you're going to be able to keep up to date with new Nacelle functionality.
Yeah, and just regarding the help center, that's looking like probably a mid-December-ish release for that. Dates being ironed out still, but forthcoming.
And with that, I want to add one more thing. You will be able to subscribe to updates from that. So anytime we release new docs, you'll be able to get subscribed to that, which is separate from maybe these code level updates. I know that there's been a lot of questions about docs, and we've heard some feedback that we're taking to heart, and we're going to build some really great new docs experiences for you all coming very soon.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that, and we appreciate the preview of the upcoming Help Center. And you heard it here first. We can hold Spencer accountable to a December date. So, appreciate that. The next question that we have coming in here: what starting point accelerators have Nacelle's customers asked for in the past that would be good for a partner to build?
Yeah, so I'm happy to answer this one as well. So, a lot of third-party apps that merchants use are a really good place for an agency or an agency partner to build that functionality for that merchant, or really for their portfolio of merchants. So think about Yotpo, for example. Yotpo has a REST API that you can access. So what that means is you can build a reviews component for your merchant storefronts using their API. So that's a really good example of one that could really increase the IP of your business to be able to offer that kind of out of the box functionality that is differentiating. So that's definitely one that I would say any kind of third-party APIs that can be exposed through these vendors, that's a really good place to start. As well, we with this sort of rethinking of the starters and pulling out a lot of these UI components, we're starting to see partners want to build their own component libraries. And that to me is a very exciting idea, because that means that you can build a library that is reusable between all of your merchants. And therefore you can actually, have technically one code base that you can reuse all these pieces from between all of your merchant projects. And that way there's less, there's less maintenance to be done across them all. And so that can be a really powerful way for you to build that. So that's something that's very exciting to me. Some of you have already sort of been presenting that to us, and I'm really excited to see that continue to happen.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. The next question that we have is, are you planning to release any training videos or access to a playground? So that's one, right? Talk about training videos. And then the second question that coincides right with that is, what level of support does Nacelle provide to partners working on implementations? So let's address the first question first. Are you planning to release any training videos or access to a playground?
Yeah, I can jump here and handle that one. On the training video side, frankly, this venue is going to be a great place to start for this. So yes, we'll be doing trainings on different topics. If you have topics that you'd really like to cover, we're all ears, because this is again probably going to be a primary venue for that. More generally, we are working on a learning and development team. So that is, I think, candidly, internally focused as well. So we'll be having training videos that we'll be using for our own Nacelle onboardings internally, but there's no reason why we wouldn't be able to expose those externally. In terms of a playground, it'd be interesting to hear like what kinds of playground environments you'd be interested in. I think that could be something that Levi's team could work on in concert with some of the reference stores, but I don't want to volunteer Levi for anything right here on the call. I think just to answer your second question, just around level of support and what we offer as part of the implementation, that's within my team's purview, and as well as Carly, who's also in the call. What we're primarily focused on providing is really threefold. So one is a CSM who is there throughout not only the initial onboarding and discovery around the initial metrics the merchant actually cares about, but they'll be having regular syncs with them on a regular cadence throughout the engagement and then beyond after implementation is done. So you have essentially a single voice, a single person who's representing that customer and obviously working with you as a partner as well. And then during implementation, we have an engagement manager who acts as the project management facility, who's there to make sure that all the trains are running on time and that we're actually hitting milestones and keeping the project on time from the Nacelle end. And again, that's intended to be complementary to what you as a partner provides. So we're here to help make sure that those everything's being facilitated properly. And then finally, from a solutions architect perspective, that's the other the technical function. We're there to help proactively address and discover issues before they become issues throughout the implementation. As many of you know, when you're in the implementation phases, it's a risk management practice where we're always trying to find things before they actually they become problems and push deadlines. So yeah, that's what the general support model looks like. Obviously, happy to talk about that more in depth if you'd like, but yeah, we'll start from there.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Spencer. Also want to make sure that all our partners are aware you can create a sandbox Nacelle environment. We give out free sandbox access to all of our partners. If you need that access, reach out to your partner account manager. You can also connect that to a free version of whether it be Contentful or a specific CMS of your choice. So that's something that's available to all of our partners. We have another question. What is the merchant profile Nacelle see most success with in terms of revenue size or tech stack? What does that look like? I'm happy to answer that. So the merchant profile that we've seen the most success with is merchants that are doing at least 10 million GMV. And from a tech stack standpoint, a lot of our merchants today are on Shopify, Shopify Plus, and they're trying to increase performance dramatically, and they want to use best in breed microservices in order to expand their brand and create that unique experience for their customers. And so that's when they look at Nacelle and make a decision that Nacelle is a good option for them. But it's right around that 10 million GMV mark in terms of revenue, and typically D2C in terms of who they're selling to. So looks like we've got another question here. How often is the starter upgraded? How often do updates roll out? Levi, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. So we haven't really decided on a cadence necessarily because the starter itself will probably not be updated as often as it had been in the past, because now the functionality is delivered through the NPM packages. So maybe a reframing of that question is, how often will the NPM packages will be updated? And it's going to be a continuous thing that as they're being used, we're getting feedback from you all and from merchants directly on any bugs that may come up, because let's be honest, it happens, and that's software. So we will be making updates as those are rolled out, as well as whenever new functionality from Nacelle is rolled out, those are going to be updated to include that. So we don't necessarily have a fixed cadence on that, but I would assume that at least once a month there will be a new version in some form published of the Nacelle View package or the Nacelle React Hooks package.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Levi. I have another one that, Levi, I think would probably be best addressed by you.
Cool.
So in the current Nacelle Nux starter kit, we see refinement filters only work for data that has already been pulled into the front end. Is there any way other than using a third-party search provider to handle filtering on the back end? That's a very, very specific question.
Yeah.
And I recognize that you may or may not need some additional time to dig into that. If you do, that's fine, and we can take that and address that in the Nacelle partner Slack workspace, so that way all of our partners can see the answer openly. If you need more time, but wanted to at least ask that. And if you have an answer now, great. And if we need more time, then we can answer that after the call.
No, I'm happy to answer that right now. Yeah, so one of the benefits of the architecture that we have today with the search specifically is that this is using a client-side search to actually filter on the catalog in order to return those results. So the problem with that is at a certain point, that catalog size becomes just too large to really be able to execute that code efficiently on a customer's device. We really can't assume that everyone's using the top of the line iPhone, right? So there's a constraint here with just raw compute power that has to be addressed in order to do some of this stuff. So with those refinement filters, there's really no problem with ripping out the pieces that we have provided and introducing your own, whether it's a third-party search API or there's a number of open source search providers like Mealy Search and TypeSense that you can spin up on AWS or any other cloud provider to enable that kind of experience for free, minus the cost of running the infrastructure. But to me, that's a really good alternative if you have the need for that performance, or if the catalog size is just too large to really do that well. We like to say under 1,000 products in the catalog, the client-side search works really well. And as you saw in the demo I provided, we are doing that client-side search on our demo store in the reference, and it works great. That store has about 100 products, so you can see that's well within that limit. And so that's sort of like what we recommend is over 1,000 products, probably want to reach for an API. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you, Levi. I appreciate that. The next question that we have is how, realizing that Nacelle is a fast-growing organization, how is Nacelle keeping customers and partners updated on new releases or new events or things that are new that are happening? I'll address the partner update kind of point of view on that, and then Spencer or Austin or Levi, I'll give you the opportunity to address how we keep our customers up to date on the latest happenings going on in Nacelle. From a partnership standpoint, we communicate with partners multiple different ways. One is through these new office hours. So again, this is going to be a weekly occurrence. Sans, next week is a holiday in the United States, and so occasionally if there are holidays, we may adjust. But the goal is to have these as a weekly cadence to keep partners updated on the latest happenings at Nacelle and specific technical topics that we believe are valuable to our partners and our partner ecosystem. We also send out emails on a monthly basis to all of our partners to keep them updated on the latest things that are happening at Nacelle. We also have, again, our Slack partner workspace, and that's the best place that you can go to get live updates around what's happening at Nacelle. We'll push out different campaigns and messaging that is happening across the company. And you also, when you join that, have access to a lot of different individuals at Nacelle and candidly across our entire partner ecosystem that you collaborate with in terms of Nacelle in our broader organization. With that, Spencer or Austin, do you want to address how we communicate with our customers in terms of the latest things that are happening at Nacelle and keep them updated?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in on just to provide some additional context is, we talk about Nacelle being a very fast growing company and all of that kind of good stuff. And formerly, Levi and his team were handling a lot of the merchant facing communications, especially around the technical topics. But one thing I just want to remind folks about, especially on the partners side, is we've been very aggressively building out the solutions architect practice, and so we now have 4 different solutions architects, adding myself as well into the mix, who are on the team. And so these folks will be great points of contact and also great resources moving forward. And again, they're going to be assigned to different accounts and different partners, but those will be resources there. But then more generally, as we are releasing new features, as updates are coming through, we'll be sharing those during, again, the regular biweekly CSM syncs with customers. And again, the partners are welcome to join those meetings as well, and actually they're encouraged to, so that everyone's in alignment on what is coming down the pike and what's going to be available. And so lots of opportunities for us to interface in those aspects. So looking forward to gearing this up for the rest of the year and also in 2022.
Yeah, thanks, Spencer. And just to add to that, we're looking at different ways. We should be updating, whether it be merchants or partners. So if there's feedback in ways you think we should be doing better, definitely all ears. And certainly updates and announcements come in all different flavors and urgencies. You have security updates, feature releases, fixes. So definitely looking at how we do things today, how can we optimize those for the future. But would love to get everyone's feedback on how we can do better.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Appreciate that. I believe that concludes all of the questions that we have. So again, Levi, Spencer, Austin, thank you so much for answering the questions that we had from both partners. And I think we maybe had a couple of customers that joined as well, that had some questions. And so again, appreciate all those that asked questions, appreciate those that answered questions. With that, Austin, I'd like to turn the time back to you to close this out.
Great. Hey, thanks, Brian. Well, I appreciate everyone joining today, and hopefully this was an exciting vehicle to help learn more about some of the updates from Nacelle and understand the purpose of these going forward. We really want these to be driven by topics that are relevant, to you. So please communicate, to your CSM, to in the partner channel of areas where you'd like to learn more. We have those initial set of topics that we have in kind of our parking lot that we'll be pulling out, but those again will be validated by this group as to which ones are going to be important. With that in mind, thanks again. Have a great week, and feel free to reach out to any of us if we can help you in any way. Take care.